What's good, everybody? It's D Brown Shanhan, and today we are going to be doing our 5th episode of the most unstoppable players in NBA 2K history. And before you start dropping in the comments who should be on this list and who shouldn't be on the list, let's make sure that I haven't already done that. So at the end of the video, the playlist will pop up of all the 4 other videos. Before you comment telling me that I missed somebody, make sure you watch those, because that's the only way you'll know. The very first player we're going to be talking about today is NBA 2K13 Russell Westbrook. In a game being notorious for not being able to block dunks, spin dunk cheese, and people just basically cherry picking as much as they possibly could, this makes way too much sense for Russell Westbrook to be as good as he was in 2K13. You couldn't do nothing about it because when you were playing with Westbrook, people expected you to basically just drive and dunk over and over again. And that would work. If you wanted to, yeah, sure. There wasn't nothing they could do about it. What was you going to do, block his dunk? You couldn't do nothing about it. But the fact that his jump shot was so easy in that game, his cue was just, if you look back at NBA 2K13 Russell Westbrook, his jump shot, he shot it over his head like this, and you could look at his hands. You could just look at his hands and know exactly when to release it. And honestly, the thing that really took Brody over the top at 2K13 was that move that you could do in 2K13, you know, say if I got a rebound with Russell Westbrook or I got a rebound with whoever and I give it to Russell Westbrook, if he's not already at half court, when I got around to the half court area or directly in front of it, y'all remember that little thing you could do where if you hold turbo and then you flick the movement stick, not the right stick, but the other one in the opposite direction of the ball hand as you hit turbo, how they would just throw it out, you know, they would throw the ball out and do like this super speed dribble. Well, Russell Westbrook being one of the fastest players in that game, probably the fastest, maybe behind like Wall or Rose only. But him, when he did that, just get out the way. Get out the way. Unless you want your sin to get done on everybody, get the fuck out the way and let me get my points. So the next player we're going to talk about is NBA 2K11 CP3. Now, Chris Paul in 2K11, this was his last year with the Hornets. And if I remember correctly, he was coming off of that injury where he hit his knee on the camera or whatever. But he still played well that season. And typically on this list, we don't really see small guards a lot because typically the most dominant players in 2K are usually the physically imposing guys who could dunk on you and they're fast and, you know, just they're very physical, like Bron, like I just said, Westbrook. But every now and again, a small guard like Curry or Chris Paul will slip through because their player is just so good that it has to be mentioned. And 2K11 Chris Paul has to be mentioned. This is one of those players that his size didn't matter. It was like Iverson. His size didn't matter. The fact that he was smaller than most of the time, he's smaller than whoever guarding him, and he's like probably the shortest player on the court, which means that it's going to be tougher to get inside. It really didn't matter. He made most of his layups. Chris Paul layup packages have always been lit, and you know 2K11 is no different. He had the outside shot. I don't know what his outside shot was, his 3-pointer in 2K11, but I remember Chris Paul. There was nothing that he couldn't do. He was a great defender. Lockdown. You can put him on 2 guards. He just cooking everybody. He was really one of those players who really didn't have no weaknesses that year, except for being small, but that still didn't stop him. So the next player we're going to be talking about is NBA 2K16 DeMar DeRozan. In 2K16, the Raptors were my team, so I found out very quickly that DeMar DeRozan's 2K counterpart was unguardable, even though he couldn't shoot the 3. His mid-range, his ability to finish around the rim, his post-up, and just everything else, it outshined it so much. Like you could back up and give me the 3. That's what people used to do, and you know you could back up and give me the 3. But it's DeMar DeRozan. I'm gonna go at you, and I'm gonna get a mid-range jumper or Euro step, and it's going in because it's DeRozan. That year I joined an online league that I found on Reddit, and the Raptors were one of the teams still available. So I'm like, my team is available. Of course I'm gonna go with my team. So you know, I joined their league and I played great. I led the league in scoring with DeMar. I made the playoffs, early exit in the playoffs. This wasn't like my friends or nothing. This was some tryhards from Reddit. Like all of these guys played 2K and they were all good, and I led the league in scoring with them. And people usually give me hell when I say this, but in 2K and real life, DeMar DeRozan puts you in the mind of like a mixture of Kobe Bryant and Dwayne Wade. And I know some of y'all are probably like, what? I'm not saying he's that good. I'm not saying their skill levels combined. I'm talking about play style. Like the fact that he dominates in the mid-range, he got the post spin, the footwork is incredible, the Euro step, the ability to finish around the rim. You know what I'm saying? And that was DeMar DeRozan in 2K16 And now it's even better. So the next player we're going to talk about is 2K13 Paul George. Paul George in 2K13 is another one of those players that I found out about through a fantasy draft in an online league. You know, I took him because he had good size as a shooting guard. In 2K13, he was listed as a shooting guard, if I remember correctly. And he could shoot the three, and I saw that his dunk tendencies and everything was good. So I was like, sure, I'll take a chance on this, I think he was like a 79 overall. So I took a chance on young Paul George, and boy, did that chance work out. Y'all gonna hear me say this a lot about people who are on this list because, as I'm always telling y'all, I've played in a lot of online leagues in my day. But in that 2K13 league where I drafted Paul George on my fantasy team, he led that league in scoring as well. Not only did he lead the league in scoring, but he also led the league in three-point shooting, like three-pointers made. And I remember this specifically because I remember just giving my friends hell about it. Like, y'all really gonna let 77 average, a 77 overall lead the league in three-pointers? You got Curry on your team. This nigga shooting more threes than Curry. What you doing? Melo? No. Durant? No. Paul George? Okay, Paul George, the best shooter in the league. I got it. Bet. Understood. And on top of that, young Paul George was still super duper athletic. He could still play lockup. And his height made him a mismatch for most people, especially considering I was playing him at the 2. So yes, 2K13 Paul George, very dominant, very unguardable, very mediocre overall. Now the last player on this list is gonna come as a surprise to everybody. I'm pretty sure it'll be a surprise to everybody, but the last player that we're gonna talk about as one of the most dominant players in NBA 2K history, NBA 2K13 from the New York Knicks, Steve Novak. Y'all probably remember that. You know what I'm saying? Remember Steve Novak used to hit threes and do this? Everybody watching this video right now who knows who Steve Novak is knows exactly what he does. They know exactly what I'm about to say. He is not some nigga who goes up and posterizes people. He's not some extreme playmaker who gets ankle breakers. Steve Novak is a spot-up shooter who didn't do anything but spot-up shoot. And people who play 2K13 can vouch for me in the comments when I tell you that Steve Novak in 2K13 was a fucking cheat code. At that time, the Knicks were one of the most popular teams in 2K, considering they had Melo and J.R. Smith and Amon Shumpert and all those guys. But they also had Steve Novak, and that was like the secret weapon coming off the bench, you know what I'm saying? And I'll give you guys a little story on how I learned that, hey, you gotta watch this nigga. When he's on the court, he's a real threat. So one of my friends who I used to play these online leagues with, I know it always goes back to the leagues. This is where playing in these online leagues for all these years is where my 2K knowledge comes from. You know what I'm saying? So we had a fantasy draft or whatever, right? And one of my friends, B, his philosophy for for drafting a team, if I can outshoot you, you can't beat me. If I can make more threes than you, you won't win. So what he did was draft like an athletic point guard. I think it was like Rose, and he would get like a big and maybe like a wing. And this was his starters. His starters was like, he would try to get a good big, a good point guard, and a swing man. And the rest of the team, three-point shooters. Kyle Korver, JJ Redick, those guys. And we had a joke about his team, considering he had all of those three-point shooters. And most of his three-point shooters were, spot-up three-point shooters who were white. Like Kyle Korver and JJ Redick, literally, like those guys. So we had a joke that we called his team the White Boys from Mayberry. Now, I don't know what the fuck Mayberry is. I don't know if that's a real place or not. But these white niggas would shoot the lights out. In a previous episode of this series, I talked about how 2K13 Brandon Jennings was one of, another one of the most overpowered players and one of my favorite players in 2K13 because he was on one of my league teams and he led us. So it was that Brandon Jennings team and I was cutting his rump and Brandon Jennings was going crazy. But out of nowhere, you know what I'm saying, Steve Novak checks into the game and this man proceeds to hit like 5 straight threes for a 15-0 run or something like that. And we're not just talking like, oh, why you keep leaving them open? Why my players keep leaving them open? I'm talking contested here. I'm talking hand in the face. Steve Novak hitting the shot, running down, doing the belt, and nothing else will piss you off than seeing a role player celebrating your face and that role player led their team to a win. And that role player being Steve Novak. So that's episode 5 of the most dominant players in NBA 2K history. Before you drop down in the comments who I left off the list, be sure to click on the playlist when it pops up to make sure, you know what I'm saying, I haven't already mentioned them. We've done 4 episodes. Was I speaking Chinese just now? What was that? 4 episodes. We've done 4 episodes of this already. So you got to make sure before you tell me somebody that they wasn't already on the list. And there's been times where I look in the comments, I'm like, oh shit, I forgot. Like, 2K13 J.R. Smith was crazy. And I end up putting him in the next video. So, be sure to do that. And If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like. And as always, I'm D Brown Shenhan. And I'm up out of here, man.